So I looked at Prawn, which is a PDF generator for Ruby, and the first thing you need to do is gem install Prawn if you haven't already done so. And this will go ahead and download the software and the documentation, which I think is just going to check it right here if they've already got it installed. All right. And the documentation, for whatever reason, we installed. So once you've got that, you go ahead, and there are basically three ways of using the Prawn PDF generator. First thing you're going to do is you're going to require Prawn so that it knows you're using it. The first type of way of doing things is where you create a new Prawn document, and then you can just type stuff at it using whatever variable you're holding on to, like PDF here. You can just reference that PDF and then give all of the commands after PDF dot, and then just tell it what you want to do. So these will go ahead and very explicitly allow you to create a variable that holds on to this new document. You can then do any amount of Ruby calculation that you want in the course of, for example, a website. In my case, my interest was I'm doing a storybook for kids. Once I create it on the web, I would also want to be able to give them a printed version. So I was looking at this as a method for creating a document that you could then mail to the person, for example. And so this first method would be very handy, where you could go ahead, create a handle essentially to a document, perform all your operations on it. You can do extra calculation in the middle, so whatever you want to do. And then when you're done with the file, you execute the render file and then give it a name. So that way you can create a name that is based on the user or whoever you're sending it to, whatever, so you can create a unique name at the time you needed it. So that would look handy in my case. The second methodology that they offer is what they consider to be an implicit generation, where you use document.generate, you give it a file name, and then you go ahead and you don't have to use the name of, or the handle for it. You don't have to use the variable that was created in the first case. This was considered an implicit use of the PDF generation. You can go ahead and just perform all these operations, and the amount of stuff that's available in PDF generation is actually pretty amazing. If you look at the documentation at the website for prawnpdf.org, the manual is only 124 pages. And they have just dozens of types of things that you can do with creating all sorts of interesting little pieces of code. You can create all these little fancy grids and make lines and various types of polygons and so forth. You can fill them in. It's really got a tremendous number of things. What struck me about it is that I remember over 20 years ago, I used to have to write PostScript code by hand on my Sun 3 workstation in order to print it out on a DEC laser printer. And when I looked at the code, like in the past few days, I said, wow, I remember all that stuff. It's exactly the same as the old PostScript type stuff that I used to have to work on more than 20 years ago. Pretty amazing to me. So once you use this implicit formulation, you save yourself a little bit of typing. And then the third option is they call it an explicit form, where you can just go ahead and create again a variable inside a do loop, and then you can, again, just like in the first case, go ahead and perform calculations. So this way also would enable you to do lots of auxiliary computation if you have to do things. And then as an example of the other things you can do with it in using the implicit formulation, I went ahead, created some polygons and rectangles, filled them with different colors. This color is like purple or something. And then I actually, you can insert various kinds of objects such as JPG or PNG files. I thought that was kind of limited, frankly, but those are the two options that I saw available. And you can actually specify options when you're inserting a graphic image for the width and the height or relative position. The main thing to realize in PDF documents is that 00 represents the lower left-hand corner of the bounding box on the page, and then they reference everything with respect to that. So if we go ahead and run IRB with that particular file, this will go ahead and it'll actually create these new items here. So the first one for the assignment, it was just going to generate a little box with a circle in the corner. Then it shows you the grid. It's got another circle at the origin and another circle up here. If we look at the implicit one, this was just giving hello world implicitly, followed again by the rest of that example. And if we do the explicit one, this was just giving me hello world explicit. I didn't do the polygon there. And then in the last case, we did the polygon. I told it to insert a picture. I told it the width and the height were to be 400, so it positioned it right here. And then I had these other items on the page where I created a purple rectangle, a purple delimited circle, and it's filled in with like a beige color. So these examples here, while they may seem very, very trivial, they allow you to create a very wide range of PDF documents with lots of different options. And then just go ahead and ask questions. I mean, it's basically, once you read the documentation, this is about the most straightforward gem I've ever seen in terms of how to use it. Questions?
What if I had a document maybe that I generated on the web as an HTML file, and I'd like to create a printed version of it?
So if you had an HTML file, presumably you would have to strip out the tags in some way and then just walk through the code. So you presumably need some kind of a code walker that would just go through it. And you could use what looks like maybe the first case approach where you do a calculation and then just say pdf.text.
Well, I was kind of hoping that it might be able to just take HTML and CSS as input and produce the PDF from that.
I don't think I saw that.
You can do that with Pronto.
Yeah, I think there's other tools.
There's a couple of ones though.
Yeah, I think there's other tools that are probably more designed for that.
Oh.
Prawn is really for drawing PDF documents.
Yeah, and if you think about just using the old PostScript style, where you would give commands like line 2 or stroke a line, this is primarily what it focuses on.
Can you build changes with an image and or add a clip mask to it?
I haven't gone that far into it. I know you can do things like do shading, so you can get some fairly sophisticated types of procedures in here. Let's see, they do give some examples.
Prawn gives you access to all of PDFs, so I'm pretty sure that.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine it would be a little involved.
The fill, the picture.
But if I have to.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can do, it'll let you do masks, and I think you can simply treat the picture as the mask that you're mapping over the surface.
Yeah, I hadn't gotten that far into it, but I mean, you can see from just some of the examples that they give here that you can tell it a fill color, and you can do different types of transparency, so that you really have a pretty wide range of functionality. This shows some examples where they're going ahead and using gradients, for example. So there's a lot of fairly straightforward programming that you can do with PostScript that's reflected, in Prawn specifically. If you need something that's fancier, I guess you have to use one of these other, gems. But for me, this is probably the most straightforward thing I could find for my application. Any other questions? Right, well, thank you very much.